You are listening to More Than CRM, powered by Tour de Force, a monthly podcast dedicated to discussing a variety of topics as they relate to success in life and in business. Let's get into today's episode.
Hello, and welcome back to More Than CRM. I'm your host, Chloe Nucius, and in this episode, we're having a conversation about millennials in the workforce. We're sitting down with Spencer English, Director of AER Inside Sales with ABCO, and our very own Cassandra Evans, Digital Marketing Specialist with Tour de Force. Welcome, Spencer and Cassandra.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having some interesting discussions about the millennial workforce, which of course I myself am a millennial, being 29 years old. I'm looking forward to the questions you'll have and some of the discussions we'll have on this.
Hello, I'm excited. I'm also a millennial. But yeah, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited to have kind of an open discussion with you guys. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, millennials will actually account for over 75% of the workforce by 2030, meaning that dynamics are changing and millennials are no longer the little fish in the sea. So let's talk a little bit about how millennials work. For example, some noted differences have been flexibility, collaboration, tech savviness, but how can an organization take advantage of this to drive success in their business?
I mean, the first thing that I would like to get out of the way is essentially the age range of the millennial generation. It seems to be that everybody speaks about millennials as anybody who just graduated from college. That's no longer the case anymore. Millennials are now having children, buying houses and things like that. And they're matured to a point where they're making very, very responsible decisions. And they're also driving a lot of the purchasing and decision-making that's going on around the world. I just wanted to kind of clear that up because anybody listening to this who has some idea that millennials are doing some of these things that the actually Gen Z generation are now kind of lumped into is maybe not the case. But as far as your question goes on how organizations can take advantage of some of the things that the millennial generation understands or is capable of doing, I mean, tech savviness is a huge one. I mean, there's so many people that I talk to that a lot of their success is not driven through their knowledge of everything that they learned in college, but it's their ability to find the answers. Millennials are able to find answers incredibly quickly. I found that there actually is some skill in literally doing Google searches and knowing how to search things correctly to find the information that you're looking for. And most of what we do in life is just trying to find the answers to the questions that we're looking for, not necessarily just knowing everything. Not everybody can be a genius. So that alone, the speed of which we can operate is incredible. The team that I have here, we are all either millennials or Gen Z, and we work incredibly fast. I mean, the speed that it takes for one of us to send an email, for example, because everybody touch types, right? So they're not sitting there staring at their keyboards wondering where every single letter is. So they're sending out emails in, seconds instead of spending minutes to do that, which then gives them more time to focus on some of the more important aspects of their work, which I work in construction. And so they're doing takeoffs and project management and things like that. And then the other part of it is the adoption to new technologies. We are constantly pushing new programs and new technologies, and they learn it really quickly because they've been working around new programs their entire lives. So it's very simple for me to push out new things, new procedures, new programs, new processes. And it takes within a week for the entire team to be proficient in the new technologies. And so those are major advantages that allow us to be incredibly flexible and allow us to evolve without too much pain in the process.
Spencer, I couldn't agree more. I feel like a big part of us picking up technology and things like that is just how flexible our generation and following generations are becoming. We are so easy to change with the times and evolving constantly that I feel like when it comes to picking up something new, we just snatch it right up and we just keep on going. So I feel like that is huge in the workforce. And I feel like businesses really need to capitalize on that and kind of work on getting that more encouraged into the rest of their workforce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we just discussed, there are a lot that millennials can bring to the table, but at the same time, there's a lot that we can learn from more experienced counterparts. What is the value, in your eyes, of intergenerational collaboration in the workplace?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of people like to believe that, oh, the millennial generation is so tech savvy and blah, 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 and they could get an air of superiority. But the generation above us, they have immense experience. There's a lot of things that we may be trying that for the younger generation, we may think that this is new and revolutionary. And these people have already been through that process. They've done it before, and they can provide extremely valuable insight to say, listen, we've tried this before, and here's what happened. We're not saying that it can't work now, but when we did it in the past, here were our barriers, and you're going to face those same barriers. They can also provide generally a good guiding beacon to look at the bigger picture and to say, here's what we're doing and here's what we need to be doing. Sometimes with the younger generations in general, you can tend to really hone in on one little thing, and you don't take the time to take a step back and say, ultimately, what are we trying to achieve? That generation above the millennial generation can provide a ton of valuable insight. They can provide a ton of help with building relationships with others, because that's another piece to it, right? There's a interpersonal dialogue that's constantly going on between everybody that you're working with, be it customers, vendors, other people within the office. And that's something that doesn't really change between generations. Speaking to a human being is speaking to a human being. And the older generations can really help navigate the waters of who to speak to when, how to communicate properly, and really help with the younger people in the groups to say, here's how things should be communicated, because so much of what we do in life is just about proper communication.
Kind of to counter the point that you made so far as the older generation having a lot more experience and knowledge, I 100% agree. But kind of just speaking from, personally being a millennial in the workplace, I think it's kind of important that we encourage everyone to stay open-minded. I feel like sometimes the older generation, because of that knowledge and experience, can almost discredit an idea before we can even finish, saying it or finish saying how it's going to be different than it was in the past. So that's why I think it's important for, the older generation to stay open-minded while the younger generation is trying to learn, so that everybody can work together and take that idea that, that we're so excited about and kind of finesse it into a final product to really enhance the business.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying there. I mean, I catch myself doing that personally. There are battles that I've fought and lost, and then new people will come in and they'll say, oh, we need to do this. I'll immediately say, no, that can't be done. After taking a step back, I say to myself, really, we should go after this again, because maybe it can be done now. Something that wasn't possible a year ago could be possible now. And it's important to keep driving at those positive improvements. So I definitely agree with the blend and keeping an open mind. It's human nature to be resistant to change. I definitely agree with your point about not just saying no to everything. But again, I also think that they can, in some cases, provide a lot of valuable insight as to how things go together.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a little bit about give and take on every side. In the distribution industry specifically, we're facing a generational shift in the workforce and congruently a digital transformation in the market. How should distributors be preparing for acquiring this new generation of human capital?
It's an interesting question. I mean, as a distributor, we're kind of a blended distributor, and we're kind of also like a rep firm. But you look at the Amazon effect. Everybody want everything now, and they also want the information now. And as far as kind of preparing the workforce or gaining the workforce, I think it's important for distribution to have an online presence, be able to say, here is what we have, and here is what it may cost, so that people can have that immediate gratification, right? Because ultimately that's what it is with Twitter, Instagram, all these things. Everybody's wanting something now. And so that gives them that gratification now. But I don't think that it should be completely computerized. And that's another piece that I think is commonly misconstrued, is that millennials only want to be behind their phones all day long. I will strongly argue against that. I do think that we tend to use our phones and we tend to use social media and things like that. But there's a reason why something like the Chase Sapphire card can become so popular just because they can say, listen, you make a phone call and you talk to a human being. You don't have to go through a whole long automated process. So I think there needs to be this blend of giving people the information that they don't want to have to go through somebody to find, give them the ability to find that information quickly. But then once they want to get to the next level, right? So, okay, I now have this information. Now I need to understand the technology a little bit further. They should be able to place a phone call or send an email and speak to a human immediately. As far as bringing in the workforce, that means strengthening up potentially like your IT departments a bit more to help implement a lot of these web programs, potentially marketing as well, to ensure that the websites have all up-to-date advertisements and things like that. But then also bolstering your, potentially like your inside sales presence or customer service presence so that people are readily available when those phone calls come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the adoption of technology is a big piece, but there's that bit of human touch that we can't ignore that really makes a big difference in operations. So I wanted to talk, and we did touch on this a little bit already, but the relationship that millennials have with technology and the effect that that has on user adoption. Is there anything that you'd like to add on that?
You will find that the younger generations are quicker to adopt new technology. And again, that goes back to the point of, people are resistant to change, but for the younger generation, it's not really a big change to have to use a website, to have to use email and things like that. There has to be a blend when it comes to user adoption. You have to find a way so that it's easy for people to use and also beneficial for them to use. And they see the immediate benefit behind using the new technology. And hopefully with a mixture of that, you can get everybody to adopt new technology. But it's always going to be a bit of a struggle. You have some people that are really quick and will immediately start using new programs. And you'll have people that are just slow to do so. I mean, I even run into that with the younger generation that I work with. That sometimes people will be really, really quick about any new program that we're using, and some people are just a little bit more resistant to change. It's not the worst thing. Everybody's different and allowed to be different in how they operate, but you certainly want to encourage everybody to use a lot of the new programs. So just generally a challenging question to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a question that a lot of different organizations are trying to find the answer to.
I guess kind of just to provide a little bit of a different perspective on that is I feel like what really helps with user adoption in a company is training as well as kind of just helping each other learn the product, right? So if you have somebody that's there and that's willing to walk you through it, through anything that you're not sure of, or, kind of introduce new pieces to you, things like that. I feel like that really helps your user adoption because I feel like sometimes people are presented with this new technology and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what all they are capable of doing with it. And I think if you have somebody there that can show you that you can do what you need to do every day from a single application and it is easier and it is better, I think that really helps user adoption a lot. And I think it makes that person themselves feel more confident in the product. And they're a lot happier about using it if they have somebody that's willing to take the time to show them how to use it.
Yeah, I think that level of collaboration can be a real game changer. Are there any challenges that you faced personally, Spencer or Cassandra, as a millennial in the current workplace?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly get stereotyped. I mean, so I work in construction, and construction is generally a bit of an aging industry. With our generation, the millennial generation typically went to university, right? Once they all graduated, that's why I think a lot of millennials had a hard time finding work, was because if everybody has a higher education, all the jobs out there aren't there for higher education. There's a ton of trades and things like that need to be filled. You need the mechanics, you need the contractors and things like that. In construction, you tend to notice that it is older industry because of the millennial generation, in my opinion. When somebody like myself steps into an office with a customer, and not only am I younger, but I also look young, then you will get the immediate stereotype. Who is this kid? What is he? They're used to talking to their buddies that are, in the same age group as them. They see you as this young and experienced individual. I try to look at things like that as actually an opportunity. I worked in sales for quite a while, and I use that as a way to actually differentiate myself from the competition. In my opinion, if I look younger and if I look like this thing that somebody's going to immediately stereotype me off of, then I can use that as an advantage to be more noticed and more remembered than everybody else. And then as long as I can go in there and immediately dispel any belief that I don't know what I'm talking about, then not only am I easily remembered, but I've also then gained their trust and respect. I try to use things like that, things that some people could see as a disadvantage, and find a way to turn it to my benefit. And so it actually, I think, has helped me throughout my career, but I could see other people could see it as a barrier, within their careers.
I couldn't agree more, Spencer. I think that sometimes it can be, really intimidating, I guess, to kind of, that scenario that you presented, to walk into a, room with people that do have that experience and that knowledge ahead of you. And it's kind of almost a fear that you have that they're just going to completely discredit you, discredit anything you have to say, and they're going to be like, okay, on to the next. So personally, yeah, I have experienced that where, you kind of nervous. You're kind of, I'm not sure if they're going to listen to me. I'm not sure if they're really going to pay attention to what I have to say, or if they're going to be like, okay, she's finally done talking. Let's move on to what we're really here for. Personally, yes, I also agree that when you are able to show them that you do know what you're talking about, that the idea that you have could work or will work, or you're able to sell that product to them, I think that kind of does show them that, okay, hey, maybe we discredited them a little bit too early. Maybe we should listen to what they have to say. Maybe we should take into account their ideas. I think that does help, as long as you have that mindset that you know what you're talking about, that you are confident going in with your product or your idea. I think that really does help with any kind of feelings that you had to get over to get there in the first place.
We've talked a lot about the abilities of millennials and how millennials work, but I want to get into what millennials value. So, according to the Manpower Group, over 85% of millennials listed culture and work-life balance as priorities in choosing an organization to work for. So, what can a company do to ensure a cohesive and productive work environment?
Culture, work-life balance. I think fulfillment is also another big piece that millennials look for. As far as culture goes, that comes from the top down, in my opinion. Nobody likes to be micromanaged, so don't micromanage them. Just make sure people are doing their work. Then otherwise, make it a comfortable environment. Make an environment that people feel like they can openly speak with each other, that they can communicate with their higher ups and have their voices heard. I think is valuable. I think it's valuable to not scoff at people who, share a laugh every once in a while. I take it as a point of pride when I go back in my department and the guys back there they're communicating and they're laughing. But when you listen a little deeper to what they're speaking about, most of the time it's about work things. It's about how they're going to answer these questions, how they're going to do these things. But they're all close enough that they're comfortable communicating with everybody. I keep an open door policy all the time. So people are in and out of my office all day long. I go and walk around, and I make it comfortable for them to be doing their work and doing the work the way that they want to do it. And I just make it a general philosophy to say, listen, as long as you're getting the work done, personally, I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. And that's enough. And then as far as work-life balance goes, again, that's feeling like you can take vacation and that it's not going to be like a mark against you. You hear about some of these places where it's a faux pas to use all of your vacation or anything like that. I encourage my employees. I have some employees and I'm like, when are you going to take vacation? We're already X amount of months throughout the year. You don't have anything scheduled. You got to take vacation. You got to take that time off. I think you want to keep it kind of a relaxed atmosphere and show that it's important to the company that employees have a balance between work and life. And while work is important, it should not be your life. And then as far as the fulfillment piece goes, I think that's it's a hard one to reach, but I think it's important that we constantly strive to find a way for our employees to feel fulfilled in their work. There's a book I was reading called Drive recently that talks about what motivates people. And I would strongly recommend anybody listening to at least skim through it. A lot of what they speak about is that motivation and feeling like your work has value, that you have value, and that your voice can be heard and that you can make positive change within the company. I think with all of those pieces combined, you'll have a happy workforce. And a happy workforce is a productive workforce. And it's always better for the company, in my opinion at least, to retain employees than it is to churn through them and constantly have new people and you have turnover and all that other stuff,
Yeah, so just building off of kind of the fulfillment that you spoke on, I feel like, not just us as millennials, but kind of just everybody, we kind of all want our work to mean something. We want to go home at the end of the day and we want to be happy about going to work the next day. We don't want to, wake up and start driving to work and be like, oh my gosh, do I really have to go to work today? Like, and not that anybody's excited to work necessarily, but you should want to go to work. You should want to see your coworkers, want to have that talk with your boss. You should not dread stepping into the front door of your job. That just shouldn't happen. If that is happening, I feel like you need to kind of reevaluate where you're at and kind of just building off of that. Even, if there's something about your job that you love to do, just a specific piece that you love to do, I would encourage people to take that up with their boss. Take it up with your boss. Let them know that you love to do that piece and see if maybe you can do more of it so that you do get that fulfillment from your job.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a really productive conversation, and I hope our listeners have found something to take away. So Spencer and Cassandra, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
First and foremost, thanks for having me. The last thoughts probably would be, if there's one thing to take away from this conversation, the millennial generation is not what people stereotype it to be. Again, we're buying houses, we're having kids, we're making responsible decisions. The rest of the world out there needs to understand that. It needs to embrace some of the differences we may have, because some of the differences millennials have they're valid. The things that we find important are valid to maintaining a productive society. I hope people can take a step back and realize that about this generation.
Yeah, Spencer, I honestly couldn't agree more. I think it all just comes back to, everybody staying open-minded and working together and being willing to learn from each other. I think it's important that we all remember that change isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think as long as both parties are willing to accept change, that really will make a difference in their professional lives and can only enhance the companies. So for me, that's the big thing, is staying open-minded and being positive about change.
Be sure to join us next month when we discuss job management and integration with public bid boards like Dodge. Until next time, this has been More Than CRM, powered by Tour de Force.